Welcome to The Most, presented by Degree. A day off for the three of us. We're back at it with all of your coverage of Copa America as we're done with the group stage. We're on to the knockout phase of the competition. Some mouth-watering ties for what has been an incredible competition thus far. Gareth Wheeler, Christian Jack, Jordan Wilson with you. My boys are back together and ready to break it all down for you. Unfortunately, we need to deal with some difficult news coming out of the Canada camp on Tuesday as Tajon Buchanan at training suffered a broken tibia. He's scheduled to have surgery on it today. It goes without saying, we wish Tajon the best through surgery and his upcoming recovery. You just hate to see it. Canada's training session was then canceled for the day. Just awful news, KJ, not only from a national team perspective, but a professional perspective as well, as it was going to be a big campaign upcoming for Tajon Buchanan. But for Canada specifically, how does this change the plans, the approach heading into the knockout round tie against Venezuela?
Yeah, there's lots of storylines out of this, right? First of all, our thoughts and prayers are with Tajon and his recovery, just a gem of a human being, and no one wants to see this. And I was going to say to you guys on our show on Sunday, we just never got around to it, but it came across my mind during the time just how fortunate Canada's been with injuries during this time, right? And you should never take that as as for granted. It's been a real blessing that Jesse Marsh throughout these games has pretty much had the best of the crop to pick from. And so, these things happen. It is sports. And here we are facing one of the best players that Canada have had over the last few years in his development, reaching this difficult time. Look, Tajon started the tournament in Atlanta and then has played a bit of a fringe role since, but undoubtedly would have been on the pitch, whether it would have been a beginning as a start to start or would have made a difference maker. And so, it becomes a bit of an issue that Jesse Marsh has got to work through in a little bit of adversity. And then also with his players, that this team have been through a lot of ups and downs together over the last few years, Jordan. And they'll know that this will still be sad for their teammates here. But these things happen. It's professional sports. And we just hope that Tajon gets a speedy recovery. But he's a very likable player and a very likable guy inside those. And Jordan, as a player, as an ex-player, what this can kind of add a bit of an impact on the team during these times when they're so close and become like a family.
Yeah, you got to hear the news. A likable guy. I'll quickly just talk about him on the pitch and what I see and what I've always just admired about him is that there are certain players that come with the liveliness and spirit that you need, right? Even if it's a day, if it doesn't work out for you, maybe going forward, you're coming with that. Tajon is not one of those players that is barking and talking a lot, but he's running at players. He's running back. He's making things happen. Action, energy. And I think that even if you're looking at this team, they're going to want to go out and do it for Tajon because just what he brings into camp. Right. And here, these are the times where you're striking forward and doing well and being on that attacking side. But for me, it's just his defensive capabilities as well. Like he knows what it'd be, the position, the dog runs that not everyone likes to do. Like he does them. So for me, I think it's a big loss just for the personnel of this team. Because look, going into the World Cup, this was a guy as well that gave the assist, that was coming with that energy, that was playing so well. That was just 2 years ago. Like Tajon can do that. It's just he's an energy player, and this is just one of those joy sucker moments where you're like, not to him.
I thought when he came on against Chile late, you saw a couple moments. Fantastic. You're like, there he is. There's Tajon. I broke my tibia about 30 years ago. I can't compare to Tajon, but it just sucks. So I really feel for the guy right now. But Jordan, just in terms of Jesse Marsh, Canada's game plan playing Venezuela, does it change with Marsh out of the team?
With Tajon being out of the team, it's tough because I talk about the defensive capabilities that he brings when this team plays just on that right side. And if you're going to go and defend, and Venezuela scored 6 goals, they have 9 points in the knockout rounds. They've been doing very well. You'd want someone like Tajon to play, but Jesse Marsh has played 16 players. Right, like he knows the guys he's going to play, and then it's Schafferberg and Larrea that are going to be in that spot. Are they going to miss him? I think in spirit, but I think this is just more of an onus on Larrea and Schafferberg to do their job that much better and be a bit tighter. I think they can go on and win, though. I'm looking at Venezuela. I think there's some deficiencies within the side. The way Canada have been playing, they're all going to be tight games. It's just we know how this goes. We followed the game for a long time. It's who's better on the day, right? I do believe, though, with the 15-16 that Jesse Marsh has been using, I think it's enough to go to the semifinal.
KJ, does it require a tactical adjustment or perhaps a new face to come into the mix? What do you make of it?
Yeah, I don't think it requires much of a tactical difference. I mean, we've seen pretty consistent shape from Jesse Marsh, and they can play a back five like they went to after 28 minutes in the Peruvian game. But I do think it's an enormous loss. I'm not sure if Jesse would have started him, but I would have. I would have started him. I would have started him in the game. I really believe that he was the best player to play in that position against this Venezuela team. And particularly, we mentioned the signs that we saw in the game in Orlando, where he came off the bench and was ready to go. And I think that, he was showing signs of progress. And again, the form and the confidence was starting to come. Jesse Marsh had worked very hard with him away from the games in training as well. And so, look, for me, this is still a great opportunity for Canada. We don't want to sleep on the opportunity that they've got, but they are undoubtedly, hamstrung by this a little bit. They are not as strong going into the game as they would be, and so the options are, likely to be Larea and Schaffelberg, you'd imagine again. But whether there's other opportunities for the players to come in, I'd like to see Matthew Choinière play. I know that he's not going to play in that position. I get it. But for me, as a player that I can come in and add another man in the midfield at some point later in the game, I think is if a player has not played in this competition yet, if maybe somebody like that just got named in the MLS All-Star team, I'm not saying he's going to start, but I still think he's a player that can come in and make a difference. But from those wide areas, I think it's pretty clear that we know that, how they're going to line up here.
I mean, KJ, we saw Marsh go to a back three at halftime against Peru. He was searching for something positive to come out of that game, just without any sort of tactical alteration. If he's going to play the same formation, like, isn't it really Ali Ahmed's like the other wide player that can come in and play that role? I'm not sure that if it opens up or whether this just means Larea sticks out on that right-hand side. Like, those seem to be the two solutions. And the latter one, Larea staying where he is, that seems the more straightforward one, KJ.
Yeah, look, I mean, Larea and Schaffelberg played well against Chile. The other options are that obviously you can bring in an Ali Ahmed, but you can bring Davies further forward as the game moves forward. Right. We're talking about different options as the game moves on, right? You can shift players across. You can effectively play a back three and have Davies play as the wing back and bring on a Kamal Miller. There's lots of different options that you can do, but I think we would expect not too much difference from the start. I really believe that, Jordan.
Yeah, I would agree with you. One thing I want to chime on just from before, I think different games require different things, right? When you're playing Chile, I thought it was a great game plan for Marsh to play Schaffelberg and be direct. They had a poor start against Peru. Guns were blazing forward. You missed Tajon going to this Venezuela match because I think you have to be a bit more defensively sound. You need someone to really protect what you have and then maybe go forward. And that's different with Schaffelberg brings. I know Richie Larea can bring that. Someone I want to see outside of the names you mentioned, KJ, I think going forward, it's worked with Alosei coming off the bench, but 6'3", 24-year-old Theo Bear, like, you're thinking maybe if this is a tie game, a 1-1, or maybe Canada's winning marginally, if there's a player to come with a frame just to hold up the ball, be a bit different when Kyle Larin comes off. I'd love to see him play Wheels. Like, I know you're fond of him as well. I don't know if I'm a bit premature with this, if this is too early to see him. But I think after the season that he's had, I think he deserves just a little bit of some burn up top.
We'll see what it looks like. Tani Olashuai has been the player with his pace that's been preferred at this tournament. But you're right, different horses for different courses. We'll continue to break down Canada ahead of that Friday night kickoff over the next 2 days here on One Soccer. But for now, in the purposes of this show, we're going to spin you around the rest of Copa America, because in a lot of different ways, it's been everything that Euro hasn't been. The passion, the fire, the pace of play, the unpredictability. It's had a little bit of everything. I think it's been outstanding to watch thus far. And the biggest storyline of all is the United States being bumped out of this competition that they're hosting on home soil. It all went wrong after an opening win against Bolivia. Timothy Weah was sent off against Panama. They were up 1-0 in that game. They ended up losing 2-1, then falling to Uruguay, who was playing for a win. I'm not sure Berhalter expected it, telling his team it was 1-1 between Panama and Bolivia in the other game. And seconds later, conceding on what turned out to be a controversial goal. But still, the United States nowhere near good enough. And if you don't score and you don't win, you can't move on in this competition. And what we've seen since that time is a full-blown meltdown in U.S. soccer circles. Everyone's having their say. Before we have our say, let's hear from the manager himself, Greg Berhalter, taking all kinds of heat after these American performances. Here's what he had to say after they were knocked out after their 1-0 loss to Uruguay.
So just to see the guys' faces in the locker room, and see the emotion of the staff and players, we're bitterly disappointed with the results. We know that we're capable of more, and in this tournament we didn't show it. It's really as simple as that. I think that you look at the stage that was set with the fans in this tournament, with the high level of competition in this tournament, and we should have done better. And we'll do a review and figure out what went wrong, why it went wrong. But I think it's it's an empty feeling right now for sure. It's pretty crazy, really. I don't understand it. I feel like I know the rule pretty well. I feel like we had the pictures that are showing how the rule could be interpreted, and it's an offside goal. It's disappointing. It really is, but that happens in football, and we have to live with it, obviously. Defensively, we're a very good team. Most games we have higher expected goals than the opponent. We create chances. We move the ball well. To me, the whole thing is, you want to keep moving the team forward, and I feel like we have. You think about the depth of the squad, the number of players we have that have played in games. So there's certainly improvement, and we need to keep going. To me, it's not, in my opinion, it's not something that you say, okay, this program's doomed. It's not the case at all. It was a poor performance. We didn't get the results that we expected, and we need to get better.
Berhalter clearly shell-shocked. The autopsy playing out as we speak. I mean, this tournament run had a lot of nonsense from the get-go. From Pulisic being compared to Lionel Messi, to Pulisic then telling the referees in the final game to go celebrate with the Uruguay players, the sending off, the reaction, the fans chanting, "Fire Greg," as he's coming off the field. Like, it got ugly. And got ugly quick. I mean, even to the point where they're calling this group of players the golden generation because they're winning CONCACAF Nations Leagues. I just don't quite get it. Who's to be blamed here? Because the blame game is being played here, Jordan. Is it all on the manager, Greg Berhalter? What do you make of this?
Look, I'm old school, Wheels. I can't put anything all on the manager. I can't. I think players are going out there. You're supposed to go and play and be your best. However, I do think in 2024, managers get most of the heat. But I also think they're still supposed to be that figure that gets the most out of the group. That's what's supposed to happen. You can talk about XGs and goals being scored or the lack thereof, but he still has to make these changes or inspire a group to really push the best foot forward. If I had to pin a blame on someone, I think Greg Berhalter would get most of it. Again, I can't give him 100%, but you have to understand this is international football. Like, everyone wants that type of job where you get to be with a team, you get to go represent your country, and you get this precious time with them. For Berhalter, I think he's looking at this and he seems so dejected in that press conference because I feel like he might be alluding to that this could be like his last days. Americans, you're hosting Copa America. You had 3 games to get points, and you ended up with 3 points at home. I understand things happen in a game, but it happens to every team at certain times. There is luck that is involved. But I think the Americans could have done more to been in a position to make it out of the group. For me, looking at the Copa Americas before, I thought they were a shoo-in to get out of this group with Uruguay. The fact that they didn't, I think that's a catastrophe.
KJ?
Yeah, there's a lot of areas I'd like to get into with this. First of all, they didn't qualify for the group because of what happened in the Panama game. Now, there's a lot of reasons why they didn't win the Panama game. First of all, Panama are better than many people thought they would be. Second of all, their star striker decided to punch someone in the face, so let's play red card with a red card for 75 minutes. And they narrowly lost the game, okay? It went the wrong way. This can sometimes happen. So, like, for this incredible hyperbole reaction, I understand it. And in many ways, being in Canada, I admire it because it shows that they care. It shows that they are a true sporting culture of a nation. It shows that they're a football country, and that's what football countries do. But I do think that it is borderline cruel. There's a level of toxicity about the way that the U.S. soccer is, that it borderlines very much like what England is doing. And then sometimes I think you lose all rationale in terms of actual discussions about it. Ultimately, what matters is internally, not externally. All the noise, all the ex-players talking, everyone chiming in, all the agendas, the cruelty on Berhalter, everybody, it doesn't matter. What matters is what do the players want? What do they play? How do they evaluate this? Can Berhalter get the best out of them? And I do think there's an element to this that Greg Berhalter is a coach. And I think that country, whether they're right or wrong, they feel like they deserve someone bigger. They want a big name, a face of U.S. soccer going into 2026. Name whoever, I don't know, whoever it could be, who is like the presence of, we have the manager, the coach. And in many ways, in many people's eyes, they think Greg Berhalter is too small for that role. I think that's unfair. I think he is a very good football coach. And Christian Pulisic campaigned to get this guy back. When all that nonsense happened with the Reina family after the World Cup, he got them through the last 16 in a difficult group, and all that nonsense happened, and he had to sit back and wait. They wanted him back. They got him back. And I think it's been really unfair that the way that he's been treated, particularly in the media. But that being said, ultimately, internally, what Matt Crocker, the sporting director, and the players and that people think is ultimately is going to have to work through this. But sometimes, guys, in tournaments, at the end of a season, when players have been playing for 9 or 10 months, preseason starting with other areas, players are exhausted, and it comes down to one game, and a guy punches a guy in the face, and sometimes it just doesn't go your way. And if that ultimately leads to someone firing, then okay. But I think it can be very, very harsh.
Yes. At the same time, KJ, perception plays a huge role here. The expectation is that the U.S. are on the verge of being a footballing giant. And we've seen this team improve over the years. Are they quite there yet to the level that their fans, many of their fans believe they are? I don't think so. I think there's a significant gap between what is being projected and the reality of where this team is at, where they are vulnerable to situations like this. Again, playing at home 2 years out from a World Cup. And that's where I think the panic really sits in.
But whose fault that, Wheel? Sorry to interrupt, but whose fault that perception? Like,
I don't blame the players or the coach. This is, listen, it's the outside noise, but also U.S. soccer is run like a business. Their players get paid more than anyone internationally on this planet. And it comes with consequences when that is the perception that these players are getting everything and more of what they require right now. And I want you to continue on because Alexei Lawless, when he comes out post-match, and I don't think he's wrong in saying this, that these players are better than previous generations, but they don't play better as a team. I think that there's something to that. But is it because of the manager? Is it because of the outside perception? Is it because of maybe how they're built and maybe a lack of balance in this team? I just wonder what you think about that, KJ.
Well, I think the perception point I'd like to pick up on what you said is ultimately, like, let's compare them to other nations going on around the world. We've seen what they can do in this Copa America. If you were to put this U.S. team in the Euros, like, talent-wise, where would they get through? They wouldn't get through a group. So, like, they haven't got a world-class player. Right. So the biggest problem for me is that they've had a league developing since 1996, and that league has never produced one world-class player. Not one world-class player. Christian Pulisic, Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams, they're good players, right?
All good players.
Very good players, not world-class players. Okay. And they're just not world-class players. So that's a big problem right there. So maybe the perception is that they think that they're better than they are. And maybe that's down to marketing.
I think that's what it is, KJ. I think that's what it is.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe this is a dose of reality. But ultimately, as I said, they could have got through this group. They narrowly lost to a good team like Uruguay. But ultimately, they have to figure out the development pathway. A country of over 300 million people with a professional league. How are you not producing world-class players? What's going wrong? So that's, for me, is the biggest problem, not necessarily why it went wrong against Panama or not getting out of the Copa America group, and should they sack Greg Berhalter. Same as Canada, same as Mexico. They're going to be seeded in the 2026 World Cup. The expectations are you absolutely have to get out that group. You have to win a knockout game. And then it comes down to the round 16 game, and then it could go either way for the U.S. For me, that's what it comes down to. So, I don't want to just labor my point, but as I said, I think that it's a little level of cruelty. There's some agendas in there, and I'm not quite sure that Berhalter, being the big personality that they want, is that guy. But ultimately, he's a coach, and he's there to try and make this team better. Jordan,
I'm with you. He is a good manager. You're right. There's systematic issues, but right now what faces U.S. soccer, which also faces Canada soccer or Mexico soccer, is like, how do you take advantage? How do you improve the most over the next 2 years? Like the systematic stuff that, these are long-term these are things that need to be improved quite clearly. But Jordan, is it another manager? Is that going to be the short-term solution to making sure that the U.S. is as good as they can be ahead of 2026? Because right now, my feeling is that Canada's in a better position that way. Like, there's a couple genuine world-class players in Davies and David. And now you have a manager in Jesse Marsh, who I think is probably more highly rated than Greg Berhalter, and a guy that, when he was doing his media work over the course of, before he took the Canada job, it was being alluded to the fact that, if Berhalter continues to falter, Marsh may be the better option or suitable option to replace him. And now Canada has Marsh. I mean, would the U.S. be a better side if Jesse Marsh was their manager?
I mean, dare I say, I don't even want to imagine what that world looks like, because Jesse Marsh came to Canada, and for me, is Canadian now. Like, he's an honorary Canadian in my book, just the way he has his team taken in the right direction. Of course, if you're looking at that story, Berhalter and Marsh, you're going to think of this situation. Berhalter looks like 1 foot might be out the door, at least in my opinion. You would think that Marsh could maybe go and do some with the group. What I like about Marsh and what he's specifically done with Canada, and maybe this is something that you measure, is, are the American players looking for someone the same way that the Canadians were, and are they as hungry? Like, there's all these little things, that intangibles that we get into that we don't really know. I know specifically for the Canadian side, they needed someone to come in and just get everyone on the same level playing field. And that's what a coach in 2024 needs to do, is get the top guy and the 25th player all feeling like they're equally working for the same goal. Of course, you're going to treat players differently because certain players are motivated by different things, but getting them all on the same playing field, I think any nation will be lucky to have Jesse Marsh as he did that with Canada, because quickly he got us all ticking. So I think that's an argument that anyone could spin if you're looking at the situation as it is right now.
Yeah, I would just add quickly that if Jesse Marsh wasn't hired by Canada, and he would be considered now, arguably the favorite for that job. Yeah. Just to reiterate for those who aren't aware, Jesse Marsh has said publicly that when they were talking to him during that process of whether they were going to rehire Berhalter or not, he was not treated well in the process, end quote. And he doesn't forget that. And I think it speaks to what Jesse Marsh's values are, that he remembers how they made him feel during that process. And he continues to tell everybody how Canada's making him feel right now. So, that says a little bit more about the way that U.S. soccer is handling situations also. Right.
It's compelling stuff, because there's pressure on all 3 host nations ahead of 2026. And, if you're playing at a disadvantage right now, it's how you can play catch up. I think that Canada, we're still in a position. It's like, how do we fully take advantage of what's happening in 2026? And those same questions are being asked in the United States and Mexico right now. Like, a lot is being made of the fact that the US and Mexico don't move on for their group and what this means for CONCACAF. I think it's unfortunate, but it doesn't mean there aren't other good emerging stories like Canada emerging from this region, KJ. Panama, perennial. Like, they've been up and coming for years now. They're a good side. A couple more dual nationals land in Jamaica, and if the association can get their you-know-what together, they're going to be a difficult team to play against. I just don't think all is lost for CONCACAF based upon these results, KJ.
No, CONCACAF is not strictly based down to what US and Mexico do.
Bingo.
And when US and Mexico falter, it doesn't mean that CONCACAF should be considered as being weakness. Panama have been excellent in this tournament and have been a coming force for a long time. Canada have been a coming force and then faltered and now have found a way back. So it's great that those two teams are going to be representing CONCACAF in this region. And if you're Canadian fans, you're happy that US and Mexico didn't get through. That's just a fact, because now the alternative storyline is that when the world comes to us in 2026 and starts to talk about Canada, US, and Mexico, we're talked as an equal. Canada, they were the only one out of the three who got out of their group at Copa America. Suddenly, we're legitimized again. Suddenly, we're not just in the tournament because we're hosting it. Well, Canada were in the World Cup in 2022, and they played really well. We know how the world's media refers to these things as reference points, as only in major tournaments. How you did 4 years ago. How did you do 2 years ago? So suddenly, Canada have been legitimized across the world now when it comes to being deserved hosts and being in that World Cup. Mexico has been in a state for a while, we just talked a lot about the US. So this is good for CONCACAF. We want CONCACAF to be represented well in the World Cup, and I'm delighted to see Panama stepping up as well.
Yeah.
History sometimes
quickly.
Yeah, sorry. History sometimes just plays a factor how you look at things, right? The U.S. and Mexico have been powerhouses in CONCACAF for so many years, but there's different teams and nations that emerge. Even look at Spain. Like, I know this is the whole Euro chat, but look at Spain like a decade and a bit ago when they burst onto the scene and start winning Euros or World Cups. Before, you look at 20, 25 years, you're not saying, oh, Spain is a powerhouse. But there are teams that go and play a certain brand of football that win people over, and I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Listen, I love different takes. I love when pundits come out with their opinion, even if I disagree. It doesn't bother me. It's part of the business, right? And I love it. Just if it bothers you as a Canadian that American pundits are turning up their nose at you, that's fine. Let it be the case. Canada thrive as underdogs. I think it's a very good position to be in. And quite frankly, we don't have a history of success. So let them be surprised. Let them talk about us. The fact that we are in the conversation, that speaks volumes. And I'm really proud that's where we're at right now. As for the tournament, I mean, Venezuela, we'll see how Canada fares, but they got a real shot. The draw, when it was put out, where Canada was in Argentina's group, you just thought if you could get out of this group, maybe they could do something here. Because the other side of the bracket, it's wild. Brazil's going to play Uruguay in a knockout round in a quarterfinal matchup. And they're going to be playing without Vinny Jr., who's out through suspension, and a team that looks far off Brazilian teams that we've typically seen. Uruguay's impressed. Colombia's been excellent, and Colombia hasn't lost a game in 26 now. What do you make of that, KJ? The fact that Brazil is going to be in tough against Uruguay in this game, and maybe there's a little bit of a different balance that we're seeing in this group. It might be Argentina's tournament, but there's certainly some contenders on the other side of the bracket as well.
Yeah, I'll take the Uruguay storyline because football is better when they're better. It's great when Bielsa's around, and everything is trending towards them beating Brazil. However, aside from 1950, when everything is trending towards them beating Brazil in the past, usually Brazil break their hearts. So let's make it, we'll wait and see on that. And in many ways, I would just want Uruguay to win because I think it would be brilliant for the game and brilliant for the tournament. It's a shame Vinny Jr. is not there. But again, I'm going to beat the drum. I just can't stand yellow card accumulations to suspensions. It's a joke of it. It's just a joke of a rule. We want the best players playing, and just for two minor discrepancies, now you're missing a massive game. Can't stand that. Get him in the game. But no, that's brilliant. And Colombia got lucky with the draw, but they've been on some roll for some time. So a lot of excitement on that side of the draw, and I think Canada's happy that they can get to watch it on the other side.
They went toe-to-toe with Brazil, and they were the better team, like Colombia were in that game, Jordan. So how do you prognosticate this?
Look, they came to the tournament. You said 26 now unbeat, 23 unbeat. Everyone's talking about them. They're the dark horse. They're the team that wasn't getting that love, but you knew that they could maybe do something. They've been playing well for a very long time, quietly, just waiting for this tournament to come around. I love that the big dogs are scrapping it out on the other side. I could see Canada go maybe get a result against Venezuela, but just seeing Colombia, the Uruguays, Brazil, I'm still rooting for Brazil. I still think a wise person said on match night this past Sunday, you don't want to play your best football in knockout round. You want to grow. Brazil have all the room to grow. I think there are going to be some interesting games moving forward for them if they can get past Uruguay.
Ooh, Uruguay's been great. Listen, like the way that Colombia plays and Uruguay plays, it's exciting. If you haven't been watching, give it a watch. You know that the history of the Euros is maybe more something that Canadian fans have watched more often, but this Copa America has provided some thrilling games. The energy, the commitment, and the fans, despite incredibly high ticket prices, have really made it an occasion as well. So go out and enjoy it. We will continue to cover Copa America and Canada's run throughout this tournament the rest of the week, including a post-match breakdown after Canada-Venezuela on Friday night. On behalf of KJ and Jordan, I'm Wheels. This has been Vamos, presented by Degree.